Yo, what is up, everybody? It's Jay the Great here, and welcome back to another Naruto reaction video here today. And today we have finally a new video by the great Swagkage. Shout out to him for dropping a video. It's been quite some time, as we all know. The legend has returned, and this video is certainly an interesting one. The title piqued my interest. As you can tell, the title of this video that you're watching right now, that is Naruto was always the underdog, right? So for you guys that are aware, I actually had Swagkage on my podcast a few months ago, and he actually prefaced this video. He was discussing that he was working on this very video. He was saying that he wanted to get into the dynamics of Naruto as a character, right, and whether or not he really was an underdog, right? Because there is this discourse, that exists in the fandom along the lines of Naruto is not an underdog, but rather a talent, right? Learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu at such a young age, having Kurama at his disposal whenever tough times were to come, almost as if he had a get out of jail free card, and in reality he wasn't just an underdog at all, right? That is the argument for Naruto not being an underdog, but rather a prodigal figure in the Naruto verse. But here, right, I'm assuming Swag going to discuss why he is an underdog, and he kind of gave some of his thoughts on that podcast, right? Essentially, he said that the tough times is what made him an underdog, right? The trials he had, even from an early age, having hatred being so spewed towards him in such a high volume by his entire village, right? Everyone despised him, right? They saw him as a demon, and that itself is a trial, right? Despite him having Kurama within him, that very demon is the reason he was ostracized from the village at such a young age. That was just some of the thoughts that Swag had, and essentially this Nine Tails power being a double-edged sword, right? It gives him power, yes, physical power, but also ostracizes him and demonizes him, literally and figuratively, from the village. Right, so I'm very interested to see what Swag has to say today. But before we begin, any loves really appreciate. Hit that like button, turn on bell notifications to stay up there with yours truly. And if you're new and you enjoy, man, you mess with the kid, make sure to hit that sub button because once you do, become part of the family forever. Let's get straight into it, and shout out to Swag. Let's do it.
So if you've been around the block once or twice, you've probably at least caught a whiff of the discourse I'll be exploring in this video. A critique often levied at Naruto, both the character and the series, is that they exist at odds with one of the things they're meant to represent. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that the series started as an underdog story with a compelling message about how hard work is more valuable than natural talent, until it undid all this by retroactively turning its main character into not just a prodigy,
Right.
but the chosen one. Something else you'll often hear following this talking point is that Rock Lee should have been the main character instead, since he's a better vehicle for the message of the value of hard work than Naruto is. Now, as the title should have already told you, I don't agree with this at all. I think that people who talk about the series like this are missing the point. Naruto is supposed
Right.
to be an underdog, but he was never meant to be completely helpless or something. The story was never ever about someone without any gifts proving that they're as good as people more talented than they are. It does stress the importance of hard work and grit, but it never tries to present these things and natural talent as being mutually exclusive. The characters in
point.
this setting don't exist in some sort of this or that dichotomy where they either have gifts or they don't. Again, it's not a story about succeeding in spite of being talentless in a world full of gifted people. It's actually about having enough faith in yourself and staying determined enough to find what your gifts are. Let's, as an
Agreed.
example, use the Rock Lee thing I brought up earlier to explore this point further. Like Naruto, Rock Lee doesn't show very much promise when he begins his career as a ninja. He's clearly supposed to be an underdog too, but unlike Naruto, he has some kind of disability that completely prevents him from using ninjutsu or genjutsu. He has things pretty bad. But something that always gets left out of this discussion, something I'll add that's very important, is that in the same fight where it's revealed that Lee has this handicap, Kakashi says that for him to be able to open up 3 of the 8 gates, he must be a genius, as it's not something anyone can do just by trying hard enough. There's no ambiguity here. He blatantly says Lee is gifted, and then just to make sure there's no confusion, explains that this is exactly what he meant. I'd also like to add that after Kakashi said this, Lee opened 2 more of the gates. So we can pretty safely say that Lee's past the point of being an ordinary genius and is actually pretty exceptional even when compared to other gifted ninja. This feels like a smoking gun argument to me. There really is no reason to introduce a character like Lee, who is so obviously meant to be an underdog, who clearly blatantly has to work harder than everyone else if he wants to be able to keep up with them, then, like, immediately say that he's actually really talented, unless of course the series is trying to say exactly what I said it is. Everyone in this setting can do something that most people can't, or is better at something than most people are. That's why an experienced super genius like Kakashi can only open one of the gates, and a supposedly good-for-nothing failure of a kid whose ninja career basically just started can open 5. The idea with Lee is that his gifts were less obvious and more difficult to tap into than most people's are. So to a lot of people, they might have seemed outright non-existent, and everyone told Lee this, that he wasn't good enough and shouldn't bother trying. But he believed he was good enough. Do I have what it takes to be a great ninja wasn't a question Lee asked himself. It wasn't a matter of if to Lee, but a matter of how. He worked backwards from the conclusion that he could work within the scope of his own limitations and still find something that makes him exceptional, and it's this kind of unwavering determination that the series is trying to preach about. Naruto, the character, exemplifies this pretty well. Now, I'm probably gonna piss a bunch of people off by saying this, but I think that at the start of the series, Naruto's in an even worse position than Lee would have been in when he graduated from the academy. Like Lee, he couldn't use genjutsu, was bad at taijutsu, and sucked at throwing shuriken. The one and only advantage he had over Lee was that he could use a ninjutsu, a single one, and it was the sexy jutsu, which is basically the same as not having any ninjutsu at all. Effectively, they were in the same position. Now, before anyone tries to say how Lee actually had it worse because he was straight up incapable of using ninjutsu and genjutsu, first of all, it really doesn't matter because it's not like Naruto wasn't trying. He was doing his best to learn all the ninjutsu the academy was trying to teach him, and it just wasn't working, so it's essentially the same thing. I'll go a step further than saying that it's just the same though. Let me actually explain how this is an advantage for Lee. As far as genjutsu goes, Naruto just can't do it. In the entire 700 chapter run of the manga, he never uses a single genjutsu ever, not once the whole entire time.
Correct.
And with ninjutsu, Naruto had a reason beyond his own control that stopped him from being able to use the kinds of ninjutsu the academy was trying to teach him, that being the Nine Tails. We'll talk more about this later, but even though everyone likes to pretend the Nine Tails was this invaluable asset to Naruto that made his life super easy or something, it caused a lot of problems for him, and in this case it messed with his chakra control to such an extent that he basically couldn't use any of the ninjutsu he was being taught properly. And unlike Lee, he couldn't afford to go all in on taijutsu because he needed to be able to perform ninjutsu to graduate. So Naruto had to waste a bunch of...
So I want to say this before we get into the the Nine Tails section of Naruto's story, right? It's obviously very pivotal to his growth through to his journey. So Swag is doing a very good job here of illuminating on the complexities of the Naruto narrative, right? Because like you said, a lot of people look at it as black and white, right? Like, oh, you're talented, so you're not an underdog, or you're not talented, so you are an underdog. It's not that black and white. There are complexities in this story, which is why Kishimoto is such a brilliant writer. So Rock Lee, for example, right? Yes, genetically, he wasn't the most favored, right? Per se. He didn't have the ability to even utilize ninjutsu or genjutsu in any degree. And because of that, right? Because of that severe, essentially handicap or disability, like Swag iterated, it makes us see him as the underdog, as the guy, right? And we see him as this prodigal taijutsu talent, right? Because of his hard work. But it's not that simple, right? Because he is extremely proficient in a way that many aren't. Like Swag iterated, Kakashi can't even open beyond one gate. And he's a genius prodigal shinobi god from childhood. He was, joning at like 10 or 13 or something crazy like that, right? So it's not as simple as, 1 + 1 = 2 here. There's complexities, there's nuance, there's context that needs to be acknowledged, right, and analyzed when deciding whether or not someone is an underdog. And Swag is basically saying what I said, before the video. It comes down to what exactly made Naruto an underdog. It was the obstacles in front of him, right? Beyond even just physical. I mean, he did have his physical limitations due to, like Swag already said, the Nine Tails sort of disrupting his chakra proficiency, his chakra usage proficiency, him not being very talented during his time in the academy, trying to graduate, unable to use simple ninjutsu, genjutsu, and like what I said also at the beginning of the video, additionally, the isolation, the demonization of him due to having Kurama inside of him. All these obstacles were in his way, these walls that he had to knock down and run through to get to his goal of becoming Hokage one day, right? So it's not as simple as, oh, he has the Nine Tails in him, look how powerful it is, he's not an underdog. It's not that simple. And Swag is doing a great job illuminating on the complexities here, but let's continue.
time and effort trying to develop skills he wasn't suited for to please a curriculum that was actively hostile to him, while for whatever reason Lee was able to graduate solely based off of his merit as a taijutsu user. There's also the whole Ninetales thing that made practically everyone in the entire village hostile to Naruto, as well as the fact that he didn't have any parents to help guide him through the learning process. These are also obstacles Lee never had to face, and they aren't minor. Having no parents or mentors to seek help from meant that until he enrolled in the academy, Naruto had to figure everything out on his own. And again, we can see that he tried. We see flashbacks of him training in a room littered with books and scrolls, stuff that he likely sought out on his own by going to the village library or whatever. While we do see him sleeping in class from time to time, it's pretty unfair to Naruto to attribute this to laziness rather than, you know, all the other stuff it could be. Like him spreading himself thin day after day training, exhausting himself trying to master jutsu and skills that he can't intuitively learn because he's either not talented enough or because he's carrying a demon inside of him that makes it impossible for him to use chakra normally, or it could be that he's unhealthy because of his diet, something that he as a 12-year-old boy really can't be held accountable for since he has no one to tell him he should be eating better. Could have been a lot of different things. The fact that he enrolled in the academy at all, that he clearly went to the village library to read more about chakra and the fundamental skills he'd need to acquire to become a ninja when we know for a fact no one was there to offer him any guidance at all, is proof that he was trying in spite of the deck being stacked against him. And on top of all that, unlike Lee, Naruto wasn't content with just being an accomplished ninja. He was aiming for Hokage. In practically every respect, he was fighting an equally steep, if not steeper, uphill battle than Lee was. That's enough of the Rock Lee comparisons, at least for now. I want to move on to some other stuff, in particular Naruto's privilege, or supposed privilege anyway, all of the advantages he's perceived to have. There are 4 big ones: the Ninetales, his teachers, his parents, and the whole reincarnation business. Let's go over each of them one at a time. Let's start with his status as Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox. This is not as much of an asset as everyone likes to pretend that it is. Like I already said earlier, this thing kept Naruto from having any mentors for the first 12 years of his life, and also made it impossible for him to control his chakra with any kind of finesse. It gave him a healing factor, which comes up like twice pre-time skip, and a lot of extra chakra to work with, but only once he trained to take advantage of it. Even the multi-shadow clone jutsu, the main way he takes advantage of his large chakra supply, is something he's able to use without any help from the Ninetales. Now before anybody says it, yeah, I know the Fox has helped Naruto out plenty of times on its own, with no input from Naruto whatsoever. I'll admit now that these aren't examples of him benefiting from the fruits of his training or anything. They're Naruto capitalizing on an advantage no one else has. But let's actually go over all the times where this happens. Off the top of my head, Naruto gets help from the Ninetales in some way against Haku, Orochimaru, Neji, Gaara, Kimimaro, Sasuke, Deidara, Orochimaru again, Kakazu, I guess, Pain, and then after that he gains control of the Ninetales and uses its chakra in most of his fights going forward. One thing you may have already noticed if you're as familiar with the series as I am is that in all of the examples I just gave from before the time skip, Naruto either didn't win the fight or he was using the Ninetales chakra intentionally after training specifically to develop the ability to tap into it. Before Shippuden, Neji and Gaara are the only 2 people he beats on account of getting help from the Fox, and he fights them after spending a month training for the Chunin exams, or in other words, training to beat both of them. To offer an example of the sort of progress he could have made in that time, Sasuke came back from his training with the Chidori and speed on par with Lee's. So it's not like Naruto even got this red chakra ability for free. Its opportunity cost was pretty steep, and he wasn't even able to use it consistently. He was actually so bad at it that the last person he ever used it against was Gaara. Even in both of these fights, the power wasn't easily accessible. The only reason he could use it against Neji was because he had all of his chakra points closed, and the only reason he could use it against Gaara was because he was completely out of chakra after creating like 500 plus clones and summoning Gamabunta. And the thing is, it's not like the Ninetales chakra was the thing that made the difference in his fight against Gaara. Naruto summoning Gamabunta was obviously a lot more decisive here, and by the way, that almost didn't even work. If he hadn't been lucky enough to summon Gamabunta's kid earlier in the fight by accident, Naruto wouldn't have gotten any help. He would have just been left there to die. Something else I'd like to point out is that even after beating both of them, Naruto didn't get promoted to Chunin anyways. In other words, winning these 2 fights, the only 2 fights he actually won before the time skip because he was the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox, didn't tangibly benefit him in any way. His ninja career didn't advance at all as a result of these victories. Now that I've gone over these 2 exceptions, let's talk about all of the other examples I listed, starting with Haku. So, okay, admittedly, Naruto did start beating Haku up pretty bad as soon as the Ninetales entered the equation, but Naruto's performance here was completely irrelevant. Right after he got beaten up by Naruto, Haku left that fight to intercept the killing blow aimed at Zabuza and die from Kakashi's attack, not Naruto's. Then, the Ninetales played no role in the entire rest of the battle on the bridge. It may as well have not even shown up at all. I'm not about to let anyone say the Ninetales saved Naruto's life here either, because Haku left like immediately after Naruto powered up. And also, Haku didn't kill Sasuke. He was holding back against the two of them because, as Zabuza says, Haku's gentle or whatever. He also met Naruto earlier that day and liked him a lot. There's no version of events where Haku kills Naruto here. It just wasn't going to happen. Against Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, Naruto lost. Against Kimimaro, Naruto lost. Against Sasuke, Naruto lost. Against Deidara, Naruto hit him a couple times, but Deidara was able to escape with substitution anyway, and Naruto had to take advantage of an opening Kakashi created for him by sniping Deidara's arm off with a portal to another dimension, and he was backed up by Guy's entire team and Sakura and Chio, and they still couldn't kill Deidara. Against Orochimaru, the second time they fought, the Tenchi Bridge, not in the Forest of Death, he used so much of the Ninetales power that he completely blacked out, almost killed Sakura by accident, and still got told that he was nothing compared to Sasuke. So then he used even more of the Ninetales power, and that still wasn't enough to kill a terminally ill Orochimaru who couldn't use his arms. In this situation, he was more of a problem than an asset, because Orochimaru and Kabuto weren't even trying to kill Yamato, Naruto, Sakura, and Sai. They say multiple times that they want to keep these Leaf Ninja alive so that they can kill other members of the Akatsuki. In fact, Kabuto tries to heal Sakura here as a gesture of good faith, and he's not even able to do it properly because of the way that Naruto injured her. So it's not like Naruto even saved anybody's lives.
That's a good point. He was more of a problem here than he was an asset.
Was putting the mission in jeopardy and putting the lives of his teammates in jeopardy. Something else I'd like to point out, because I think it's pretty funny, is that this is the second time in a row that Naruto fights someone who can't use either of their arms, gets massively powered up by the Ninetales, and has backup on his side, and still fails to kill his armless, weakened opponent. Like in Shippuden, his record when fighting under these very specific, very favorable circumstances is somehow 0-2. Anyway, against Kakazu, he uses like a smidge, I guess, but I'm not sure how much that really affected things. I think it's reasonable to attribute his victory here more to the S-rank forbidden jutsu that blew Kakazu up like a nuclear bomb.
It's a fair conclusion, yeah. I tend to agree with that.
He used the jutsu for the first time. Finally, there's pain. So the only reason Naruto even had to tap into the Ninetales chakra here at all is because it, as in the Ninetales itself, made it impossible for him to gather nature energy for Sage Mode mid-combat. I also think it's worth pointing out here that the only reason he was even fighting pain at all is because he was the Jinchuriki of the Ninetales, which also, as I just said, gave him a unique disadvantage in this fight that no one else but him would have had with the whole Sage Mode thing. Now in this fight, which again only happened because Naruto was the host of the Ninetales, he had to use everything. He almost let the Ninetales kill him and take over his body because that's how much he wanted to beat Pain, and because he had to if he didn't want to lose. And that was still barely enough for him to scrape by with the win. But you know what, just to be agreeable, I'll count this as a clean Ninetales related win for Naruto. So throughout the entire series, discounting fights where Naruto is taking advantage of training he put himself through to tap into the Ninetales power, the thing only makes the difference between winning and losing a single time, and it's against the guy who only wanted to fight him because the Ninetales was inside him in the first place. After this, of course, Naruto trains with another Jinchuriki, and in the process gains access to Ninetales Chakra Mode, which allows him to tap into large amounts of the Fox's chakra at will. As part of this process, Naruto has to fight the Ninetales and beat it under the threat of death if he loses. And it goes without saying he couldn't use any Ninetales chakra in this fight. He had to win using skills he developed throughout his career, independent of Kurama's presence or influence. This isn't something he had to do either. He could have just not taken the challenge, but he did anyway. And so, considering the nature of the training and all the negative ways being a Jinchuriki affected him earlier in his life, I think it's fair to say that Naruto earned the power he obtained at the Waterfall of Truth. And, even after this, it's not like things get easy for Naruto. He struggles against the Raikage, he's nearly killed by Nagato, he's unable to beat the third Raikage with Ninetales Chakra Mode, and actually switches over to Sage Mode. He's unable to do anything to Obito without help from Kakashi, so on and so forth. And this is all without mentioning that to tap into all of Kurama's power, Naruto had to become his friend. keeping in mind that he got the shitty, evil, cynical half of the Nine Tails sealed in him, and that no one before him had ever managed to befriend the Nine Tails even without this extra disadvantage. But I'll talk more about that later. Now, up until this point, at least concerning the Nine Tails stuff, I've only talked about the literal on-screen events. Let's focus on the subtext for a bit. So, all the way back in Chapter 1, when Naruto finds out he's the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, he's not told that it's been sealed inside him, or whatever. What Mizuki says is that Naruto is the Nine-Tailed Fox. Later in the chapter, Iruka speaks with Mizuki and has to make a distinction between Naruto and the Nine Tails. The idea here obviously being that he sees them as two separate entities, while most of the other villagers see the two as one and the same. There are also other times, particularly early on in the series, where characters speak about Naruto like this, referring to him as the Nine Tails rather than as its host. It still persists further into the series, but mostly with characters who don't see Naruto or other Jinchuriki as anything other than the beasts they're carrying. The members of the Akatsuki, for example. Now, some of you are probably wondering where I'm going with this, and, well, one of Naruto's unique disadvantages is that he has to overcome being perceived this way by the people around him. Once he learns that he's carrying the Nine Tails, it's clearly of at least some importance to him that people are able to see the distinction between the two of them. Knowing this, let's re-examine all of the examples that we took a look at earlier, all the times he's ever been powered up by the Nine Tails throughout the series. In situations where he leans on the power as a crutch, like where the chakra is kind of given to him and he doesn't consciously tap into it, you'll notice a few common trends. He typically succumbs to whatever he's feeling in the moment. This is often rage. He always begins to resemble the Nine Tails. He loses his sense of self either partially or completely, and he almost always fights with the intent to kill. Finally, and this next one is really important, he never wins. Obviously, I don't know what Kishimoto was thinking when he wrote the series, but I'd be willing to bet that all of this is intentional. Whenever Naruto finds himself in a position where a power-up from the Nine Tails might seem helpful, it's meant to be an easy but ultimately flawed and incomplete solution to whatever problem he's currently facing. We'll typically see him interact directly with the fox.
A shortcut, yeah. It's like a shortcut when he utilizes it.
Always, like,
I agree with that.
Blatantly constructed to look like he's making a deal with the devil. In these instances, he definitely gets more powerful, but it comes at a cost. This strength, the purely physical, tangible kind, does technically move him closer towards his goal of becoming Hokage, but at the cost of him getting to be him, Naruto. In these moments, the two of them stop being separate entities, and it starts to look like Mizuki was right. Naruto is the Nine-Tailed Fox that destroyed the Leaf Village. This is obviously something that Naruto doesn't want, something he's aiming to avoid. It's not real progress. These are cheap, unearned power-ups, but the series is aware of this, and usually even features some kind of underlying narrative reason why Naruto's decision to lean on the Nine Tails in a given moment is wrong. For example, the first time something like this happens, Naruto's fighting Haku, and they're engaged in a heated conversation about the nature of ninja and whether or not they're just tools, means to an end meant to fight and die for their village or the person that hired them. As we know, towards the end of the arc, Naruto is able to make Zabuza realize that this isn't true, and that he and Haku should see themselves and each other as human beings, rather than as mindless killing machines. This is why Naruto fails to kill Haku in his fit of rage, because that's not the correct solution to the problem here. If Naruto were to kill Haku here, he'd be perpetuating the system that led to the entire conflict in the first place, and ultimately nothing would change. The pointlessness of Haku's death is highlighted by the fact that Haku dies to save Zabuza, only for Zabuza to die like immediately afterwards. The series is saying that these characters killing each other doesn't help any of them, just people like Gato, and that Naruto was wrong for giving in to the urge to do so. What Naruto does manage to accomplish is a lot more meaningful than killing Haku would have been. He's able to reach Zabuza by appealing to his humanity, which, saves Zabuza's soul, and also gets him to help them deal with Gato and his army of thugs. When he sees what he believes is Sasuke's death, Naruto has a moment of weakness, where he's overcome by rage and hatred. His conviction is put to the test, but his emotions superseded. He stops seeing Haku as a human being and starts to see him as a target. It's only when he breaks Haku's mask and sees his face that he's reminded of exactly what he was trying to say earlier. His opponent isn't a faceless killing machine, but a human being. And Naruto realizes that if he, in a fit of rage, kills Haku in retaliation for Sasuke's death, he's no better than Haku, Zabuza, or, most importantly, the Nine Tails. Again, succumbing to the allure of the Nine Tails' power here is supposed to be a moment of weakness, a mistake on Naruto's part, not indicative of any growth or progress or whatever. The idea that the power of the Nine Tails comes at the expense of Naruto's humanity and sense of self is reinforced in the following arc by Gaara. Gaara's obviously supposed to be a foil to Naruto, and I don't think I need to explain how. Let's take a look at the fight these two have at the arc's climax and at the groundwork the story lays out for it. Just about everyone who knows Gaara, and even people who meet him for the first time in this arc, they're scared of him pretty much whenever they're around him, and it gets a lot worse, as soon as he starts transforming into Shukaku. Tamari's scared of her brother, but she's paralyzed with fear by Shukaku. Shukaku. Kankuro's also scared of his brother, but he even says himself that the way he feels about Shukaku is on a completely different level. He says that the Leaf Ninja won't know true fear until they see Gaara transform. So on and so forth. These aren't the only two characters who express this kind of sentiment about Gaara, but you get the point by now, right? Now with this fear, there obviously comes some obedience and respect. Temari and Kankuro spend the entire arc doing whatever they can to keep Gaara happy because they're afraid that he might kill them if he gets upset. Many Sand Ninja also speak highly of Gaara. Plenty of them even refer to him as the village's secret weapon. A reputation like this is pretty difficult to develop. Most seasoned adult ninja don't even get this kind of respect from their peers. But for Gaara, while it comes easily, it also comes at a steep price. He's powerful and people take him seriously, but he's also seen as a monster, and that's because he allows himself to be a monster. Like Naruto, when Gaara draws on the Scale Beast's power, he begins to resemble
the demonization.
But to highlight why doing so is a bad thing, the series makes Gaara's transformation look grotesque and terrifying. Like when Naruto does his Berserk Ninetales thing, he looks kinda scary, I guess, but Gaara takes it to a different level. Now, in order to reach the height of his power, Gaara has to give control of his body to Shukaku, completely surrender his autonomy, and the idea here is that the power on its own isn't worth anything. Gaara gets stronger, but in the process literally stops being himself. These beasts can be used as a shortcut to power, but that's not the same as a shortcut to success, at least not Naruto's idea of success. People would probably have ended up respecting and fearing Naruto if he leaned on the power of the Nine Tails the same way Gaara leaned on the power of Shukaku, but they wouldn't have loved and admired him the way he would need them to in order for him to become Hokage. This is why Gaara has to overcome Shukaku's influence, and more importantly, grow out of the belief that he should live solely to get stronger at any cost, to experience any personal growth, and eventually to become Kazekage. Like I said, as far as this is concerned, Shukaku and Kurama are narrative devices meant to represent shortcuts to power, but not necessarily to success, fulfillment, or happiness. Even though Naruto uses the power of the Nine Tails to defeat Gaara, he does so on his own terms and doesn't allow it to influence him beyond making him stronger. Naruto has to prove to Gaara and to himself that the general public perception of them is wrong, that they're more than the beasts they carry inside of them. If he had entered the same state of mindless bloodlust as he had against Haku and Orochimaru, he probably would have gotten a bigger power boost than what was provided to him by tapping into the chakra himself, but he probably would have been too aggressive and out of his own mind to save Gamakichi, or maybe even use the summoning jutsu in the first place. Speaking of the summoning jutsu, this is another way that Naruto and Gaara are shown to be distinct in this fight. While Gaara has easy, on-demand access to Shukaku's power, the two of them exist in a perpetual power struggle with one another. They both hate each other and only work together when and because they feel like they have to.
Out of necessity,
most of Gaara's problems stem from this dynamic. Naruto and Kurama have a similar relationship at this point in the series, so while Naruto could have responded to Gaara's overwhelming power by doing the same thing and letting the Nine Tails take him over, he recognizes in the moment that this isn't the correct approach. He opts for the riskier and more difficult, but ultimately correct decision to summon Gamabunta and works with him to defeat Shukaku. What I feel like their combined transformation into the Nine Tails is supposed to represent, like as a visual metaphor, is the idea that Naruto is able to achieve the same thing Gaara did, power on a frankly ridiculous scale, without sacrificing his autonomy the same way Gaara had to, and without literally becoming the Nine Tails and proving Mizuki and others right for seeing him that way. Obviously, the Nine Tails is way stronger than Gamabunta, so this isn't literally true, but that's what I believe the subtext is here. It's just too brilliant an analogy to have been an accident, and I can't really think of anything else the story could have meant to convey by setting up a random problem that was solved by Naruto and Gamabunta transforming into the Nine Tails here. So let's quickly recap. Naruto is able to get through to Gaara by winning the fight on his own terms, proving that he was able to find strength without making the same sacrifices for that strength that Gaara had been up to that point. The main takeaway from the fight is supposed to be that power isn't paramount. Not only is seeking it at all costs self-destructive and at odds with achieving other meaningful forms of personal growth, but Gaara's approach to it turns out isn't the only efficient way to obtain power, and in fact isn't the most efficient way to do it either. That's why he lost to Naruto. That's also why whenever we see Gaara again, he doesn't use the Shukaku transformation. It provides cheap and easy power in the short term, but comes at the cost of pretty much everything else Gaara wants, and stops him from reaching the height of his potential as a shinobi anyway. All this stuff gets reinforced by future events. Like, really blatantly, actually. See, what's interesting is that while Naruto teaches Gaara this lesson, Gaara's the only one who actually really internalizes it. Naruto's pretty good about resisting the urge to go berserk the way he did against Haku. Usually. He goes the whole entire next arc after this without using the Nine Tails power at all. The next time we see him do it, he's fighting Kimimaro, and the reason he succumbs to the Fox's influence is because of how emotional the events of the Sasuke retrieval arc make him. Like I said, the series uses Gaara to convey that this is supposed to be a bad thing, and it's not really subtle about it at all. Naruto just gets annihilated by Kimimaro here. Can't do anything to him at all. Then Lee shows up and does better, but still can't win. Then Gaara shows up. Unlike Naruto, he's calm, collected, and most importantly, has beaten the temptation to let Shukaku take him over. And he actually starts winning. Granted, Kimimaro does almost win the fight in the end, but he has to transform twice to do it. He barely even had to try in his base form to invalidate everything Naruto threw at him. The difference between the two characters is highlighted, again, about as blatantly as it could be at the beginning of Shippuden. By completely conquering Shukaku's influence, Gaara's reached the level of Swagkage. This is the equivalent of Naruto's dream. But as we continue to see, Naruto still hasn't overcome the influence of the Nine Tails, and as a result, is still really, really far from becoming Hokage. This is about as obvious as the series possibly could have made it that the Nine Tails is supposed to be more of an obstacle than an advantage. Naruto has to overcome this obstacle to get what he wants, the position of Hokage, the same way Gaara had to overcome something similar to become Kazekage. Anyway, let's go back to the Sasuke retrieval arc for a second. I already talked about how the series shows that Naruto using the chakra as a crutch is a bad thing with the Kimimaro fight, but I skipped over Naruto versus...
So I want to say this because this is a great tangent by Swagkage, and I'm glad he brought up Gaara. Gaara, at the beginning, right, when we're first introduced to him, he's embracing the isolation. He's embracing the demonization of his character, of his identity, right? When people see him, they're fearful. There's no respect, right? There's no admiration, like Swag iterated. No admiration, no respect. As far as, oh, I look up to this guy type of respect. It's pure fear, right? Pure fear and terror. That's all his presence delivers, right? And Naruto was farther along at this point in time in what I like to describe as his ideological evolution. He knew the Nine Tails wasn't the answer at this point, right? And he was farther along his evolution ideologically. Obviously, he was weaker than Gaara, right, at this point, at least, until they fought at the end. And because of that, he led by example for Gaara. So when he fought Gaara at the end of Konoha Crush arc, Gaara had a shift in his ideology, right? He defeated him without Nine Tails intervention, or at least substantial Nine Tails intervention. He used his training. He used all those hours in the lab, essentially, and he used that to his advantage, right? The Shadow Clone Jutsu, the summoning of Gamabunta. And what happened? There was a shift in Gaara's ideology, right? And then he became the one that was leading by example, right? He had a 180 type of ideological evolution. He went from being this terrorizing demon to a loved and admired shinobi that was literally leading his village, his entire village. He became the Kazekage, which is the highest title that you can reach in the shinobi world as a shinobi, right? So he did it. And then he became the example for Naruto, right? You see that in Shippuden. Naruto's like, wow, he did it. He made it. And Naruto is still battling his own demons, literally and figuratively. Right? So Swag is essentially beautifully illuminating that Kurama is a double-edged sword, right? Like I said. But one side of the sword heavily outweighs the other. The side of what the consequences are of using this shortcut access to power. What are the consequences of that? You lose your literal identity, right? Such as when he becomes V2, right? When he gets Four Tails or beyond, he loses his identity. He's no longer conscious. His will is no longer being utilized. It's the Nine Tails will. And what also comes with that? Him actually becoming a risk to others he cares about, such as in his battle against Orochimaru on the Tenchi Bridge. He almost killed who he loved. Right? He almost killed Sakura. And he was very guilty. He felt very guilty because of that. That really furthered his ideological evolution. He said, I can't do this. I can't afford to do this again because I'll end up making a grave mistake, right? So that's a consequence. The further demonization of him, when people see that, they're fucking terrified, right? They're terrified of what they see. The village absolutely despises him. So I'm sure every time they hear about him using that power and what he does and the destruction he causes, it's just more hate that is infused in the hearts of these villagers. Right? So this Nine Tails power isn't just a gift from God that is allowing him to win the battles. So I even proved that most battles he doesn't even win with it. The only one he arguably won with was against Gaara and Pain. That's it. The other ones he lost. So it isn't this trump card as people perceive it to be. It's not this Deus Ex Machina. It's not whatever these guys, people want to describe it as, it isn't that. It's an obstacle, figuratively and literally. These moments symbolize moments of weakness, if anything, ironically enough. It's not moments of power, it's not moments of domination, it's moments of weakness. It illuminates the obstacle that the Nine Tails is for Naruto. And Gaara's case literally proves that further. Once he let go of the hate and the shortcut of access to power, what happened? He became the Kazekage. He became one of the most admired and loved shinobi in the world, and also one of the most powerful. We saw how he performed against Deidara. He lost, yes, but he performed very, very admirable and very well. So far, great job by Swag. He's doing a very good job of presenting his case here, and I agree. I think I always have, and I'm just being further reinforced of what I already believed in as well. Let's continue, though.
Sasuke to stay on topic with the whole Gaara thing. As I already mentioned, Naruto lost his first fight with Sasuke in the Final Valley, and like all the other fights I've talked about so far, there's some subtext here, a narrative reason for Naruto's defeat beyond the fact that he's physically weaker than Sasuke here. What you'll notice if you rewatch the fight is that Naruto starts by trying to talk Sasuke out of his decision to train with Orochimaru and really only fights in self-defense. When this fails though, he falls back on the power of the Nine Tails and decides to force Sasuke to come back with him. Naruto's problem here is his inability and honestly unwillingness to understand Sasuke and the belief that he can solve the problem by just overpowering him. If Naruto had won here, it honestly would have just validated Sasuke's belief that he needed to train with Orochimaru. He would have found a way out of the village eventually, and Naruto would have just been sent back to square one. This is why Sasuke shows Naruto some respect, but pays no mind to anything he says. It's power without personal growth or any real conviction behind it. Naruto's desire to prove his physical strength to Sasuke is actually what costs him the fight here too. If he'd gone for a serious attack rather than scratching at Sasuke's headband, he could have at least secured a draw. The idea that his failure here will somehow impede his progress toward becoming Hokage is one the series echoes the next time Naruto meets Sasuke. He straight up says so himself. Now before anybody tries to say that this point doesn't stand because Naruto could have used more Nine Tails chakra in one or whatever, as soon as the cloak goes from one tail to two tails, he completely loses control of himself and tries to kill his comrades. He almost kills Kakashi doing this, actually. So he would have killed Sasuke here if he'd done that. I mean, pretty much every single one of the next few times he does something like this, he ends up almost killing one of his teammates. It should be self-explanatory why this is bad, so that brings us to his fight with Pain. First of all, here Naruto makes the same mistake as Gaara and adopts an at-all-costs mindset concerning his victory. He concedes control of himself to the Nine Tails and nearly dies because of this mistake. It's a perfect parallel to how Gaara fought back in part 1. On top of that, when Naruto gives in and lets Kurama take him over, he's basically admitting defeat in the ideological battle he's having with Nagato, the same way he did with Haku and with Sasuke. So even in the one fight Naruto wins partially off the back of help from the Nine Tails, the series recognizes and directly addresses why this is a problem, and everything he accomplished using its chakra isn't indicative of any real growth. Yamato even says all this to Naruto himself. You know, the Nine Tails power, it's something that's worth respecting, but it's not really your power, Naruto. Even if we ignore all the super apparent risks, like the harm the Nine Tails can and has caused to Naruto and those around him whenever he uses its power, there's a problem with the principle of leaning on the Nine Tails the way Naruto tended to in the first half of the series. Like I've been saying, it stands in the way of his ability to achieve real, meaningful growth as a ninja. You know, that wasn't Naruto fighting Deidara. That wasn't Naruto fighting
it's not earned power.
That wasn't Naruto fighting Pain. The series only begins to treat his use of the Nine Tails chakra as legitimate from the time of his training with B at the Waterfall of Truth onward. And now hopefully we can all agree that the fruits of this training, that first Nine Tails chakra mode form, were well earned. Naruto deserved this. In order to get it, he had to beat the Nine Tails without relying on the Nine Tails at all. In this fight, he uses Shadow Clones. He uses the Rasengan. He uses the Rasen Shuriken. He uses Sage Mode. All stuff he learned without the help of the Nine Tails, without a Kekkei Genkai, or without a genetic predisposition towards any of it of any kind.
Hard work and dedication.
The thing is, this was step 1. He still wasn't done yet, not even close actually. Even after putting his life on the line in a death match against the Nine Tails and winning, Naruto didn't get any of the cool abilities that other Jinchuriki had. Couldn't transform into the Nine Tails, and he couldn't fire a tailed beast bomb. And on top of that, the form that he did get was just a band-aid ability, something he was gonna have to work with for the time being because it wasn't and couldn't have been his end goal. Using this form perpetually put Naruto's life at risk, which is something he was gonna have to address eventually. The only way around
Correct.
all these problems was for Naruto to befriend the Nine Tails, something that no one before him had ever managed to do or even come close to managing to do. And the thing is, in case some of you forgot, this is not the normal Nine Tails Naruto's carrying inside of him. This was the super asshole evil half. So let's all quit pretending that Naruto had any of this Nine Tails stuff handed to him on a silver platter. Hopefully
Correct,
I've
absolutely.
convinced you by now that he didn't. Next, let's talk about his teachers. People like to say that because Naruto was the son of the 4th Hokage and he was the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, he had access to a series of elite tutors that accelerated his growth in a way that gave him an unfair advantage over his peers. At first glance, it's hard to deny that he was taught by some pretty distinguished ninja, but like with the Nine Tails...
So I want to say this quickly because I think this is an important point, and I'm glad Swag ended this section of the video with that. It's the idea of acquiring power the right way, right? The idea of earning your keep in the shinobi world. I think that was a theme that was heavily explored in the narrative. And Kurama himself was a symbol of what happens when you take a shortcut in attempting to earn power. Kurama's not the only symbol. We have Shikaku with Gaara, we have Orochimaru with Sasuke, etc. Because every time Naruto tries to utilize this unearned power, he fails. Basically every time. He fails. And essentially, these moments symbolize how not earning your power or your keep can harm you and others around you. You're not ready for the level of respect and or success that you want to obtain. You haven't properly obtained it. So what happens? You fail. You fall short. Right? You fall short. And we see that with Sasuke as well. Sasuke, with Orochimaru, gains power. There's fear in his enemy's eyes. But what happens? He ends up learning the truth about Itachi. He ends up learning that Itachi was probably holding back against him anyway. Right? He learns all these things. Gaara as well. So this idea of earning your keep, of truly becoming, someone with the actual merit to reach a level of power and success you want to obtain, is constantly explored and reinforced. You can live a better life when you earn your keep, when you earn your power the right way. And the truth is, for the majority of the narrative, Kurama was a symbol of what happens when you don't do that. He's not just this trump card like people want to imagine or conclude. He's not. He was a symbol for what not earning your keep is, for taking shortcuts, for taking the easy path, the easy route. It's that simple. In his moments of ideological or mental weakness, he utilized Kurama. It wasn't the other way around. He didn't use these in moments of strength. Kurama wasn't a Super Saiyan type figure or a Super Saiyan type symbol. Right? In Dragon Ball, Super Saiyan usually, right, it's the converse here, usually is used in times of high conviction. It is used in times of growth, not in times of mental weakness. So, very well done by Swag. I agree completely. Let's continue.
People often exaggerate how much this did to help Naruto. I'm gonna repeat here that he had no one to teach him anything for the first 12 years of his life. 12. Everyone else in the series at least had parents to consult for their training and could probably seek help from other adults in the village. Naruto had to rely entirely on the academy, which was focusing on things he was naturally predisposed to be bad at or straight up incapable of practically applying. This is enough to offset a few good teachers. Now let's actually look at the teachers: Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Bee. Kakashi teaches Naruto nothing in part 1 but how to walk up trees, and Naruto gets more help from Sakura in this respect than he does from legendary copy ninja Kakashi. Jiraiya is admittedly a seemingly valuable teacher to have, and teaches Naruto a lot of stuff in part 1, chiefly the summoning jutsu and the Rasengan, but Naruto does half the work for the Rasengan on his own, and after this, Jiraiya teaches him like nothing at all. Naruto learns a big Rasengan and how to dispel genjutsu during the time skip. That's it. Then B is the only person in the whole series who could have taught Naruto how to control the Nine Tails, and even then the process was complicated by how unique Naruto's abilities were as a Jinchuriki. I also think that getting help from B is something offset by the fact that Naruto was, at the time of his training, being targeted by two of, if not the two most powerful living ninja in the world. Plus, if these two extremely powerful ninja managed to capture him, it meant the end of the world. So there is a lot of pressure on him to succeed. I think it's also offset by the fact that in order to fully take advantage of this training, Naruto had to figure out a lot of things on his own and befriend Kurama, and B couldn't help him with any of this. Even if none of that stuff was true, let's consider a few things. First of all, it's not really that difficult to find someone who's super powerful and willing to teach you in this universe. Sakura just walked up to the Hokage, also a Sannin like Jiraiya, and asked to become her student. And it worked! The best taijutsu user of all time, as said by Madara Uchiha himself, sought out Lee and made him his protege. Everyone with a secret clan jutsu had special instruction from their clan that no one else got, and like anyone could have approached Kakashi for the kind of help that Naruto got. He probably would have said yes to them the same way Asuma did when Naruto asked him for help. Most of Naruto's core jutsu are either self-taught or things he specially adapted to his skill set anyway. Shadow clones, Rasengan, Rasen Shuriken, and all the Nine Tails chakra mode specific stuff. He either partially or completely developed all of these things on his own, with an immense amount of effort, and if he received any instruction at all, at most he got a helping hand from one or more teachers. His determination to improve and belief that he was capable of improving did a lot more for him than people are willing to admit, and likewise, people overblow how much these three did for Naruto massively. Let's talk about his parents next. We won't have to spend very long on this because it's the least impactful thing we've talked about so far and are going to talk about by a pretty wide margin. The only genetic advantage Naruto has is the same larger than average chakra pool as most other members of the Uzumaki clan, which is made both redundant and irrelevant by the time he masters the Nine Tails chakra. All this really did for him, practically speaking, is make it possible for him to use the multi-shadow clone jutsu, which Iruka points out he worked himself to death to learn anyway. Now, some of you are probably thinking that what I just said is ridiculous. Surely being the son of the 4th Hokage and a particularly blessed member of the Uzumaki clan means Naruto should be predisposed to being a good ninja, right? No, that's not how that works. If you're good at something, your kid isn't going to be automatically good at that thing. Sometimes that sort of thing happens. Some famous singers are the children of other famous singers, so on and so forth, but it's not so common that we can say it's a guarantee. And usually this happens as a result of the child receiving some kind of help or instruction from the parent in question, which Naruto obviously didn't. If they'd actually survived and had taught Naruto the same way other ninja have been shown instructing their children, then we could talk about privilege as far as this is concerned. But that's not what happened. The closest Naruto comes to benefiting from who his parents are is when he meets each of them respectively inside his mind as a part of the sealing jutsu Minato used to make Naruto the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Both of them actually offer Naruto some pretty meaningful, tangible help when they meet him. Minato stops the seal from breaking, which saves Naruto's life, and Kushina uses her chains to partially suppress the Nine Tails and help Naruto defeat it. But think about this for just a second. What part of this requires Naruto to be related to either of them? Minato almost definitely would have programmed the sealing jutsu the same way whether he'd sealed the Nine Tails in his own kid or not. The whole point of dying and giving half the fox to Naruto was to keep the Nine Tails under the Leaf's control. So no matter who became its Jinchuriki, Minato had a vested interest in helping that person the same way he helped Naruto. As its previous Jinchuriki, Kushina wouldn't have minded offering help to a future host of the Nine Tails either. His respective meetings with Minato and Kushina would have almost definitely happened whether he'd been their kid or not. Now before anyone tries to fight me on the genetics thing I was talking about a second ago, it's stated with no ambiguity that Naruto's parents didn't pass any special gifts on to him. And it wasn't just any Joe Schmo that said this either. This came from the mouth of the Sage of Six Paths. This isn't a retcon or whatever either. The series has always been pretty consistent regarding the whole Naruto has no
not a retcon,
thing. Orochimaru makes this point for me all the time, actually. Pretty much every time he interacts with Naruto, Orochimaru finds an opportunity to say something about how he's just not as good as Sasuke is. He witnesses the power of the Nine Tails on 2 separate occasions and never once considers stealing Naruto's body instead of Sasuke's. He doesn't even think Naruto, with all his supposed genetic gifts and the power of the Nine Tails, is worth kidnapping to have as a backup in case he can't take Sasuke's body. When she first meets him, Tsunade doesn't seem to think much of Naruto either, and she's floored when she sees him perform the Rasengan for the first time. It's actually revealed later that Tsunade knows who his parents are too. Here's the most plain example, though. During the three-way deadlock, Jiraiya and Orochimaru speak briefly about Naruto. In this conversation, Orochimaru says, to quote him directly, "My ability to recognize talent is unrivaled. In my eyes, that kid is nothing but mediocre." Jiraiya, one of the only people in the series who actually knows that Naruto is the son of the 4th Hokage, doesn't respond by saying something like, well, he actually does have talent, you just don't know him, or whatever. He agrees with Orochimaru and explains that this is exactly why he wants to train Naruto. He's trained geniuses before and finds it boring. Orochimaru assumes that this is because Jiraiya wants a student he sees himself in, one who reminds him of a younger Jiraiya, who, by the way, is implied over and over was a dunce in his youth the same way Naruto was, and eventually became one of the most powerful ninja in the world. Now you can try to rationalize this all you want. Maybe Jiraiya was just going along with whatever Orochimaru was saying to keep him from realizing that Naruto was the son of the fourth Hokage or whatever. But I think it's easier and more honest to just, take the characters at their word here. First, because in this case, the point Jiraiya is making is actually one of the themes of the arc, so it's more likely than not that he's telling the truth, and then especially because there are plenty of other examples of this sort of thing happening throughout the series, including, but not limited to, the one I mentioned earlier with the Sage of Six Paths. Speaking of the Sage of Six Paths, let's move on to the last supposed source of Naruto's privilege, the fact that he's a reincarnation of Ashura Otsutsuki,
Of course.
one of the two sons of the Sage of Six Paths. Now, at first glance, I'll admit this seems pretty damning. It's kind of Chosen One-esque, or it at least appears that way, and what you'll often see people point back to is Naruto's conversation with Neji about fate during the Chunin exams. It's very common for someone making the points that I'm arguing against right now to say that Neji was right all along. But this only proves, if anything, the opposite. The first thing we need to establish about this whole thing is that it isn't some kind of prophetic cosmic plot armor that ensures Naruto's survival or success or whatever. When he learns that he's Ashura reincarnated, he's dead. Same with Sasuke. Hagoromo also tells him that he, as in, Hagoromo himself, can't do anything to affect the outside world, and that Naruto and Sasuke's survival depends on other people. This means that if not for the help that they each received from Minato and Kabuto respectively, plus some other people like Sakura and Karin, they would have died here with or without Hagoromo. Before anyone tries to say this, no, it wasn't guaranteed by fate or whatever that Naruto and Sasuke would be saved either. That doesn't make any sense. Hagoromo would have just said so if that were the case, and it's been shown that that's not how this works anyway. Hashirama, for example, the previous reincarnation of Ashura, was killed in a war he spent most of his tenure as Hokage trying to prevent, and he died 80 years or something before Madara did, without really doing anything to stop Madara or save the world. Hashirama failed, even despite the fact that he was a reincarnation of the same person Naruto was, and Madara would have failed to get anywhere if he didn't have Zetsu helping him out. And that's the next thing. With Zetsu running around setting up his 1,000-year Kaguya revival plan or whatever, it's hard to feel like Indra and Ashura periodically reincarnating meaningfully affected the events of the series. In fact, the subtext of the fight with Kaguya is that the future can't be dictated by any one person. That's what Naruto seeks to prove to Zetsu by defeating Kaguya, that history is made by all who take part in it, not by a select few architects. The only thing that people reincarnated from the souls of Indra and Ashura are said to be destined for is to fight each other to the death forever. Hagoromo, their dad, and also someone who's seen every major historical event throughout the entire series timeline, described it as a ceaseless conflict, something that was never, ever, ever, ever going to end. Kakashi also alludes to something like this when he picks Naruto up from the final valley after the fight at the end of part 1. And the weight of this conflict falls onto Naruto's shoulders. Naruto has to succeed where every person before him has failed in a battle against what he's told is fate itself. Ashura failed to reach a peaceful resolution with Indra, Hashirama failed to do the same with Madara, and the same was true of every pair of reincarnates in between. But Naruto succeeded here. There are two ways to interpret this. The first is that fate doesn't actually exist in the world of Naruto, and that being Ashura reincarnated had no bearing on Naruto's life or achievements, or that fate does exist, but Naruto had to succeed in spite of it. In either case, this whole Neji was right business is nonsense. If anything, this is just another obstacle unique to Naruto that he had to overcome on his journey to become Hokage. Let's put a pin in this for a second and talk more about that last part. This is a key aspect of Naruto's character throughout the series, and it's something I often see people ignore. Naruto expects a lot of himself, more than most people do, and more than most people in his position often would. His relationship with Sasuke is a good example of this. He goes above and beyond to be a good friend to Sasuke and actually makes saving him a personal requirement before he considers himself worthy of becoming Hokage. To anyone but Naruto, Sasuke would have looked like a lost cause. In fact, he did to everyone but Naruto. By the end of Shippuden, practically everyone important to him had told him to let Sasuke go because they didn't think he could be saved. It's not Naruto's dedication to Sasuke specifically that I want to highlight here, but rather his unwavering resolve and commitment to doing what he believes is right in general. When people tell Naruto he needs to be realistic and that Sasuke is beyond saving, he doesn't see pragmatism, but sees weakness instead. To Naruto, saving Sasuke is the right thing to do, so he just has to do it, plain and simple, and he approaches every problem like this. If he sees the possibility of success somewhere, no matter how faint it is, he'll pursue it, and this is why he's so successful. He expects the best of himself at all times and doesn't stop until he achieves this. This extends beyond the scope of his skills as a ninja too. No matter how difficult something is and how unlikely his desired outcome is, if Naruto sees an opportunity to do the right thing or to obtain personal growth, he'll pursue it at all costs. This is highlighted time and time again as the single most prominent catalyst for his growth. The Shadow Clone Jutsu, the Rasengan, the Rasen Shuriken, Sage Mode, and the Tailed Beast Bomb are all things he's given reason to believe he can't learn. He failed a graduation exam that required him to perform the Clone Jutsu 3 times in a row and still decided to put his everything into learning the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu when he took the Scroll of Sealing. There's an extremely good chance he failed many times before pulling it off, because when Iruka found him, Naruto hadn't even started practicing the second jutsu listed on the scroll. He literally couldn't perform the Rasengan properly when he first learned it, because he wasn't talented enough, and this is a weakness he was unable to overcome for years. Rather than accept this though, because Naruto works backward from the conclusion that he will succeed, he found a workaround and mastered the jutsu anyway, despite the fact that, like I said, he wasn't talented enough to perform it normally. The same thing happened with the Rasen Shuriken. Combining a nature transformation with the Rasengan was said to be impossible, and Naruto couldn't do it normally, but because of how committed he was, he found a workaround that took advantage of skills he already had. The same thing happened with Sage Mode. Naruto found out he couldn't gather nature energy mid-combat because of the Nine Tails, but refused to quit and discovered a workaround for this. Viewed individually, these are all stories of an underdog succeeding despite all odds, and it's never because he's the son of the 4th Hokage or the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, or even because he's Ashura reborn. It's because he refuses to take no for an answer because he expects better than that of himself. Like I said, this doesn't just apply to his approach to learning ninjutsu. Naruto never settles for less than the best outcome he thinks he can achieve no matter what he's doing. He never goes back on his word, that whole thing. Now, this is actually really important, so important that it's arguably the thematic foundation of the entire series. I'm not going to discuss this in as much detail as I could, but one of the concepts explored by the series' first arc, The Land of Waves, is the potential impact of an individual's core philosophy and ideals. Zabuza basically tries to tell Naruto that having greater ambitions beyond the scope of the individual is a privilege not afforded to shinobi. All they should be concerned with is being powerful enough to carry out the orders given to them by people with the resources and influence necessary to make their ambitions a reality. In this case, for example, Tazuna and Gato are using ninja as proxies in an ideological battle to see which of their ambitions come to fruition. And all that really matters is which side has the better ninja. What's funny is many people who engage with the series make the mistake of viewing it this way too. People will treat Naruto saving the world like it was a total layup just because he was powerful, which completely ignores all of the non-combat situations he had to successfully navigate to do so. Naruto comes to embody Zabuza and Haku's ideal vision of a ninja when he leans on Kurama's power and nearly kills Haku during the battle on the bridge. And like I said during the Nine-Tails section of the video, Naruto's not supposed to look admirable here. He even catches that what he's doing is wrong, that he shouldn't strive to be an emotionless killer focused primarily on his mission objective. This battle with Haku is pretty much completely irrelevant since Kakashi ends up killing him anyway. Where Naruto really makes a difference is in his ideological confrontation with Zabuza, where he forces Zabuza to reconsider the way he treated Haku and his generally cynical worldview. Here, Naruto goes well above and beyond what's expected of him. We're even explicitly told that this is outside the scope of his mission objective, but because what Zabuza's been doing doesn't sit right with him, he feels compelled to do something anyway. The series is full of moments like these, and it's typically through these moments that Naruto most prominently affects the world around him. If Naruto hadn't gotten through to Zabuza, or Inari and the rest of the residents of the Land of Waves for that matter, he and the rest of Team 7 probably wouldn't have been able to take out Gato and the rest of his thugs when they showed up to the bridge. To provide some examples from elsewhere in the series, when he fights Neji and Gaara respectively, Naruto tries and succeeds to appeal to their humanity and save them from their cynicism the same way he did with Zabuza and Haku, which he didn't have to do, but it's a good thing for him and everybody else that he did given later events. For even more examples, he steps in to save Tsunade against a Jonin with a jutsu he hasn't even mastered yet. He drops everything to save Gaara at the start of Shippuden. He doesn't give in to his rage and speed speaks to Pain rather than killing him in an emotional fit. He takes it upon himself to enter the 4th Great Ninja War and fights like every reanimation at once. He goes the extra mile when fighting Obito and fights to save the tailed beasts. He appeals to Obito's humanity the same way he did with Pain, and in the process forgives Obito for killing his parents and like ruining his entire life. And of course, like I was saying earlier, Naruto never gives up on Sasuke. Much of Naruto's success can be traced back to his resolve, force of personality, and thorough commitment to doing what he believes is right. Even if we stay within close proximity of the examples I just gave, Haku opts not to kill him because of a prior interaction they have where Naruto shows how genuine of a kid he is. Neji saves Hinata's life during the battle against Obito and Madara. Gaara, as a result of his interaction with Naruto, grows into a person who's able to act as the linchpin that holds the allied shinobi forces together when it threatens to fall apart. Tsunade takes the position of 5th Hokage, saves Sasuke and Kakashi, and teaches Sakura medical ninjutsu and her own unique brand of taijutsu, which, by the way, leads to Sakura helping save Naruto's life after Madara rips the Nine Tails out of him, and also leads to her landing a decisive blow against Kaguya. Naruto's decision to hash things out with Pain saves many Leaf Ninja, including Kakashi, without whom defeating Obito and Kaguya would have been nearly impossible. His patience with the Nine Tails and compassion for the other tailed beasts leads him to unlock Kurama's full power, and eventually...
Yeah, folks, I'll give my ideas and my thoughts on the idea of fate after the video. It's almost over, so shout out to Swag.
And in both cases, he saves Naruto's life. Finally, of course, without Sasuke, he wouldn't have been able to undo the infinite Tsukuyomi, and if we're counting some of the canon movies, later in the leaf would have been destroyed by a giant meteor if Sasuke hadn't been there to blow it up. None of this stuff has anything to do with Naruto's genes or any gifts bestowed upon him, and as I discussed earlier, this can't be due to the fact that he was reincarnated from Ashura's soul. Ashura couldn't reach Indra, and Hashirama gave up on Madara. Naruto and Sasuke were, if anything, fated to battle to the death, but Naruto's compassion and resolve were strong enough to overcome this. In no respect were any of his accomplishments handed to him. They were all hard-earned and came as a result of Naruto consistently giving 100% no matter what he's doing and refusing to compromise on any of his principles. Even the Yang power he got from Hagoromo came with the acknowledgement that he'd proven he deserved it, and with it, he also inherited the responsibility of saving the world and ending the, up until then, ceaseless cycle of violence between Indra and Ashura.
Correct.
Naruto had to answer for the failures of countless others before him, including people who lived and died before he was even born. In fact, even including the Sage of Six Paths, and he rose to the challenge without a single complaint. He just did it, right? He took responsibility for it and successfully solved all these problems created by people that weren't him, tons of people he hadn't even met before in his life, and a lot of the people who failed to fix things that became Naruto's responsibility were better equipped to deal with them than he was. I'll leave you guys with the following question. If Hashirama, who is also a reincarnate of Ashura, tamed all 9-tailed beasts, not just the Nine Tails, was born with significantly better gifts than Naruto, had the political influence that comes with being Hokage and the leader of his clan, and created the framework for the modern shinobi system, couldn't bring about world peace, how's it fair for us to expect Naruto, an orphan outcast with almost none of what Hashirama had, to succeed where he failed?
Great video by Swag, man. Great stuff. Good to see him back. So I definitely want to get my thoughts on the idea of fate, right? Fate is an argument that Neji made, right, when he was battling Naruto during the Chunin exams. However, Naruto, in that very battle, defied it, right? Being this underdog, loser, hated shinobi, beating the #1 recruit, right, of the Leaf. That was proving Neji wrong, right? And he himself proved that ideology wrong. All these war-causing moments, he was able to mitigate with his conviction, with his willpower. Yeah, he has the power, blah, blah, but even beyond that, he's a fate defier. He molds and crafts his own journey. Why? Because for him, it's win or die trying. There is no other plan B. There's no plan C. He has one plan. That's to win. That's to achieve his goals at all costs, even if it means he loses his life. And what came as a result of that? His own self-molded journey. He did it. His greatest foes defied fate because of him. Pain, undoing all the death he caused, right, at the end of the Pain arc. Obito, eventually siding with the Alliance after being Jubito. You know, all these moments, Naruto crafted with his will. He defied fate. He clashed against it, the idea of it, right, the idea of what was supposed to happen. He battled against it, and he changed it. He defeated it. That's who Naruto is. Right? That's why he's so admired. His conviction is why he's admired. Not even his power. Yeah, he's powerful. Don't get me wrong. He earned that. It's his will. It's his conviction. Right? His mindset. That's what separates him from many anime characters in the entire anime history. Not just Naruto, but in all anime. It's his willingness to do what has to be done, right, at all costs, and his care for others and what he's willing to do to protect and serve them. That's why he's different. And as far as the overall premise of this video, Naruto was an underdog. From the moment he was born, he was demonized. The very second he was fucking born, there was a destruction of the leaf, and what did Minato have to do? Inject the Nine Tails chakra into him. He was demonized from the start. He never had a chance. That's what the narrative was throughout his childhood. This guy doesn't have a chance. He's a monster. What's in him is the reason why we had so much destruction and death and etc. He never had a chance. No parents, no support, no leadership, no mentorship for over a decade at the beginning of his life. He didn't have any of that. And, as he kept fighting, he didn't give up. He never gave up. Never. And what happened? He earned success. He earned these mentors. Iruka respected him because of his conviction. Kakashi with Team 7 respected him because of his conviction. Sasuke eventually, at the end of the war arc and Naruto, respected him. His enemies eventually respected him, such as Zabuza in the Land of Waves, etc. He earned that. That's not given. None of that shit's given to him. None of it. Not even the Nine Tails power. The real power didn't come until he earned it. That's the point. Underdogs earned success. They're not gifted nothing. He was never gifted any of this. And these like superficial, surface level analysis of Naruto's journey heavily misrepresent what he really is and what he went through. And Swag did a beautiful job illuminating on all of that. He did it very well. It's not as simple as, oh, he had the Nine Tails, so that's why he won. No. Incorrect. That's ignoring and attempting to negate all the shit that he had to accomplish, all the shit he had to endure, all the willpower that was necessary to come out on top, to reach the position of Hokage. All that isn't negated just because some people have a superficial, surface level analysis of who Naruto is. It's his character that molded him into the greatest shinobi to ever live. So I completely agree, and I always have. I never thought that Naruto was handed anything, to be quite honest with you. I never thought that, and like I said at the beginning of this video before we started reacting to Swags, he was on my podcast, and we discussed this for a bit. The symbolism, the complexities of the Naruto verse, right, of the Shinobi world, and how it's not just, oh, this guy's stronger, so he wins. It's not that simple. This isn't the kind of narrative that people think it is, or a lot of people think it is. Naruto isn't the type of character some people think he is. He's much more complex and much more honorable and admirable than that. It's a reason why he's so beloved by millions of people around the world. So great video by Swagkage. I can go on for hours and hours on this. I have before. Naruto is one of the greatest anime characters to ever be created. One of the most honorable, admirable, and underdog type of characters we've ever seen. And there's a reason why Kishimoto's manga is one of the highest selling mangas to ever grace, the bookshelves and the online stores. It's that simple. So, yeah, folks, that's my thoughts on the video. Great video by Swag. Very, very well done. I'm glad to see him back. Great video, Swaggy, for watching. Great job, brother. Hope to see you back, posting consistently. I think we all do. But yeah, folks, let me know your thoughts on this. Do you think he isn't an underdog? Do you have a better case for why he might not be an underdog? Whatever the case may be, feel free to leave your thoughts below or consider joining my Discord. The description has the link to the server, the description of this video, rather. And I hope you folks enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Stay classy.